I repeat what I think I hear you saying? I think I hear you saying that.
Yeah, as Anthony is saying right there, it's also good not to say, so what you're saying is, put the burden of understanding on yourself and ask what I'm hearing you say. That helps with rapport and tone and everything.
And you also heard in this example that, once again, Anthony asked for consent. It'd be okay if I repeat this back to you. In fact, you need throughout the conversation to repeatedly touch base with your conversation partner to ensure that they still have consent for their conversation to continue forward.
Okay, so if somebody can be good and find meaning and purpose and happiness with a completely different God or even without any God, why is that a good reason to think that you have it correct?
Yeah, so Anthony asked that question because these Mormons are saying they have a positive changed life due to following what the Book of Mormon teaches. And also connected to that, the core claim we're talking about is God exists. And they're saying they have a positive changed life because of the Book of Mormon. And then there's also the chain of reasoning there is the God had some influence on the creation of the Book of Mormon. So these are the types of connections you're seeing, and there's points to question all in there. So
that's right. They're making a kind of not a deductive argument, but a general inference to the case that the God is the source of this, and not taking into account alternative hypotheses which lead to the same result. And this is typical with respect to different types of claims of your interlocutor, that they need to stop to think that there may be other ways to think about this, to look at it and consider it in terms of alternatives they have not stopped to think are possible or are even worth considering.
Meaning it's just like we're just going through the motions, and it's like there's no meaning to life, there's no meaning to anything that we do.
Yeah, how do you think someone without this belief could get meaning in life?
There you go. So that's not really talking about epistemology or, valid and sound reasons. This is about potentially helping us get away from certain sources of bias that could make us move away from believing things merely because of rational epistemic reasons. And these psychosocial motivations are a lot of potential sources of bias, and these types of questions helps us to deal with those.
The opening up this possibility that it can or should be tested begins to introduce doubt, which is from a scientific perspective as well. So that's very helpful.
Yep, and here's some examples.
What would the test look like? What?
Yeah, what would it look like?
Oh, you're just a cruel man, Reid. You're a cruel, cruel man.
And next up, here's a great example of a technique you very rarely see in regular conversations, especially debates. You don't let people just kind of sit there and think about something. So this is what we do all the time in street epistemology conversations: is embrace the pause.
What is the method that you're doing that's making you 99% confident that a God exists? So you're trying to get one. I can name you the chief method has been reason, but there's also
that's where I'll say I don't know. I don't really know how to answer that question.
Warrant being 90% sure that it's spirits.
That's again awkward pause, but
that is a good question. You're making me rethink my whole life. I don't know.
There you go. The pause is where reflection happens the most. It helps people go into system 2 thinking, slow thinking, and it's just really great to see. In SE conversations, we're not expecting someone to change their mind right there on the spot. Most of the time, it's just people reflect on what they believe in the pauses and after the conversation when they're in private and alone.
hopefully you'd agree that we live in a time where we have wildly different beliefs. And because we have wildly different beliefs as a society, we're getting ourselves into trouble. And this is hopefully a way to get us out of that trouble. Now, how it works is, so street epistemology is about coaching critical thought and about illuminating the distinction between the few true beliefs from the many, many false ones that are out there. And it's a way to have a polite discussion, a meaningful discussion, and you're not getting bogged down in the details of the belief itself. In fact, the belief itself is quite unimportant. And if you find yourself talking too much about the belief, then you're not practicing street epistemology. You're debating the belief. So the first question I'm going to ask is, and I want to have someone, maybe they could talk to me, what is the shape of the earth? So I'd like to have a volunteer from you guys. I'd like to have a volunteer who will say that the earth is round, and I will say that the earth is flat, and that'll be my belief. And then maybe we could have a debate about it, and then we can contrast that with a street epistemology conversation. So would anyone like to take the position that the earth is round, and I can start first as we debate?
I'll do it. I don't know what case I could make, but
well, you're making the case that the earth is round, so you have the easier case to make, I think.
Yes.
So my case is the earth is flat. And the reason, Jim, I think that the earth is flat is because I walk outside, it looks flat to me, so I think the earth is flat. I'm not sure why you think the earth is round, but I'd love to hear you, Jim, and where you're coming from on that.
Well, Mark, let's see. We've had the satellites. I mean, the space people have gone around the world.
That's what they say. I've actually never been up in space. So that is a debate. And it doesn't, I'll say what I think, and Jim will say what he thinks. And it's not really getting to the heart of the matter. Why am I thinking that the earth is flat? What thought process am I using to get there? And if we can discover that, and then we can really get to whether how I form beliefs is a reliable way to form a belief. And maybe the earth is flat. And if it is, then Jim and I, using street epistemology, could discover that together. Now we're going to have a conversation using street epistemology. Now, Jim, if you don't mind, now I want you to believe that the earth is flat. Is that okay? Do you think you'd be able to do that?
Yeah, I think I could do that.
All right. The earth is flat, and I'm going to talk to you in a different way, a different manner, to discover why we believe what we believe. So, Jim, why do you believe that the earth is flat?
Mark, I think it's apparent. Anytime you get out in an open field, you can see that it's not round at all, that you can see you can see in the horizon that it's right there. It can't be round. It has to be flat because I can see it all in all directions.
So the primary reason, Jim, which I think you're telling me is the why you believe that the earth is flat, is that you look outside and it looks flat to you.
Yeah.
So that's the primary reason why you believe that. So if somebody, Jim, could show you that there is a curvature when you look outside, would you reduce your confidence level at all in the belief, or would you still believe the belief?
Boy, I don't know. I have to think about that, Mark. Let me think about that.
So either way he answers that, we could really get to the heart of the matter. So if Jim says, well, yeah, I've reduced my confidence in the belief, if somehow you could show me that there's a curvature to the earth. And so then we're getting kind of closer to how he forms beliefs. And if he said, which people do, and I'm sure you've come across people who say, you know what, you could show me that, but I'm still going to believe it. In fact, you could show me whatever you want, I'm still going to believe it. Well, you've learned something there too.
You have heard from Anthony why to do SE. and what the goals of SE can be. So now I'd like to crash right into the practical how. Early on, when I was learning this, Anthony warned me, "Oh, Dali, be careful because you like to see things all rigid and stuff." So remember that this is not, you don't have to click everything on the list. This isn't necessarily the best order to go through it. It's a nice one. This dangerously oversimplified list is probably really good when you're starting out and trying to remember what the next step is and all that kind of thing. And then once you've learned this well enough, just dance free form with it. Hey, Ryan.
Hey, Dali. We're already friends. So let's pretend that I asked you about your day and you answered. Do you have a claim about the world? Something that you think is true that you'd be willing to have explored? I'll try to hear you out and not just argue.
Sure. I believe that the Earth is a rotating ball, a sphere, an oblate spheroid. So I guess that's the claim, right? The Earth is a rotating ball?
It is.
Yeah. So what's the next step? I see establish a claim.
Yes.
Define terms. Okay. Rotating ball. How may I define the terms about, I think we're on a rotating spinning ball, we're not on a flat Earth, that kind of thing?
Yeah, I mean, so when you say a rotating ball, just to be clear, you mean a sphere.
Okay, so
yeah.
Reasons are next then.
Yes.
Okay, so we've got the terms. It rotates in about a day. The reason I think it's a rotating ball is because I see the sky, and as an amateur astronomer, I can set up a telescope. And if I arrange the telescope to where my pictures aren't smeared, that means I've got my telescope aligned with the axis of rotation of the planet. So there's an axle that's actually pointed in exactly the same orientation as the planet. And if I measure, once I get it set up right, if I measure that angle relative to level on the ground, it's always exactly my latitude.
Okay.
I think that can only happen on a rotating sphere.
Gotcha. Okay, well, let me try to paraphrase back to you and see if I've understood your reasons well. It sounds like you're saying that you believe the Earth is a rotating ball. When you align your telescope with the rotation of the sky, the resulting angle is always level to your latitude. Okay, and so some of those would be the authorities and the methods that you use. Gotcha.
Yeah, the authorities on the question are those that I trust their epistemology. I trust the reasons they come to conclusions based on information.
Okay, can you consider any hypotheticals that would move you up or down on this claim?
Sure. To move me up on this claim is really just more evidence of a similar thing. If I were to get a picture from Starman's Tesla, right, looking back at Earth, that might be additional information that would help confirm things. And to reduce me, all it would take was one repeatable observation, one consistent, other people can see it, repeatable observation that does not fit the model. And my confidence would come up plummeting.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate the conversation.
Street epistemology is potentially very short if critical thinking is prioritized and practiced by the person making the claim. In this case, that was me. Usually we go for a much longer conversation, including the questioner repeating back everything they've understood and confirming the communication to even more detail than we did today. Part of the payoff for the person allowing themselves to be examined is to be listened to without acrimony. They're not getting told they're bad or argued with in a big way. We don't pay them anything except attention, so be generous with your listening. Understand, in street epistemology, we are not trying to get to the actual truth of the claim. This is more like a review with people, and the goal is for them to evaluate the reliability, their confidence in their claim based on their reasons and their epistemologies. My opinion as the questioner ideally has very little to do with it. I want to have almost no biases, and I do allow myself the bias of being very in favor of critical thinking, but that's about it.
How's it going? It's going well.
Good, good. You just chilling in the family room or what?
Yeah, just yeah, I don't know. I have a doctor's appointment tomorrow, so I'll have to leave eventually, but
Can't stay forever.
yeah, just getting over some sickness stuff. So
Damn. Well, hope things get better. I'm curious, did you have anything in mind as a potential claim?
yeah, I did have something in mind. I tried it in the SE Discord before, so I think the claim would be that people who practice SE should be involved in self-defense in some way or learn some form of self-defense.
The claim is that people who practice street epistemology should be trained in self-defense.
Should practice self-defense in some way.
Self-defense.
Yeah, I may not take it that far. But.
Interesting. Okay, so not necessarily be trained, but at least practice it in some way.
Yeah.
Okay, and by people who practice SE, you mean everyone who does the method, whether it means like going out to do it or doing it from behind your computer screen? You mean everybody?
I wouldn't see the reason to have to do it if you're going to be behind a computer screen, but also just because I can't see the reason doesn't mean that there isn't one. But yeah, I would say probably I'm just talking about people who plan to practice it face to face.
Got it. Okay. Interesting. Okay. Why do you believe this claim?
Because of the possibility of cognitive dissonance to make people physically violent.
You said the probability or the possibility?
The possibility.
The possibility. Okay. Yeah. Possibility of cognitive dissonance to make people violent. Yeah. Interesting. I've never heard this.
Yeah, I'm trying it out.
So why do you think that cognitive dissonance can possibly lead to someone becoming violent? Have you had experience with it? Is there some sort of study? What are the reasons?
Yeah. So I don't have a study. So that's the part where I have issues with my own claim. I do have a lot of experiences though, yes. I have experiences where asking a certain question has caused that person to be provoked and start to puff up and even threaten, things like that.
Right.
And maybe some people would say that's just a time to back down or leave the scenario. But just the fact that those situations happen, I think that it's just another, it can be another measure of safety that may not even take that much time to do if you know how to do it correctly. I think that's the idea.
I never asked you how, like on a scale of 0 to 100, how confident are you in the claim that SE practitioners should practice some form of self-defense?
Yeah, I'd say like a 7. Somewhere around
7
that.
out of 10?
Yeah, 7 out of 10.
7 out of 10, okay.
Yeah.
What I'm hearing is like maybe the more I'm wondering if you would say this, that the more successful a street epistemology conversation is, the more doubt someone might produce, and that might lead them to more cognitive dissonance, which would potentially lead them to violence.
Yep, that's correct.
Okay, Quaid, thanks a lot, man. Does anybody else have any comments or criticisms or questions about that conversation?
I think it was pretty great. I enjoyed it.
Thank you, sir.
So let's go ahead and I'll share my screen. I'll show you what I'm doing here before I send you the link. All right, so you're just going to get a link here, and you're just going to type in whatever nickname you want. You click start. And if you ever want to do this with somebody else, it's quite fun. You just copy that, and I'll be posting this into the chat. So this is a bit experimental because now what I'm trying to do is bring SE into large groups. And I have done the survey with as many as 25 people before. And the dynamic is much different when you have a large group. With street epistemology, we want to ask questions that respectfully challenge someone else's thinking about a particular belief or how they came to know what it is that they know. And using the survey has been really helpful for me as a group, for us to all learn how differently we think about these sorts of things. First of all, this is like an open discussion, so feel free to speak up if you'd like. What do you guys think about this so far?
It's really impressive. It's really cool.
Okay.
Taking it to make it so you can do it with lots of people all at once. That's very cool.
Yeah, 19 through 24. So let's go ahead and get into it. I often investigate beliefs that do not match my own. When I do the survey, I usually ask other people what they think each statement means in their own words, and I get them to explain to me how they interpret it. Seeing as though we all agree, we can probably skip that step. Though if somebody says that they don't investigate beliefs, that unless they match theirs, what's a good question we could ask those people? If somebody says, I don't bother investigating beliefs that aren't the same as mine, what's a good question we could ask?
Is it important to you to know the truth? Is that something that interests you? Or are you just concerned with believing what you believe?
Right. Well, what if they say, well, I already have the truth, so I already know.
How did you arrive at that truth?
That's a good opener, right? And I like to start with 19 because it's kind of putting the conversation partner in our shoes here to think about why I would be interested in investigating their beliefs if I don't think they match mine. Yeah, there's lots of different ways you can take this one. Another good question is, if somebody were to disagree to 19, I could ask them, when is the best time to investigate a belief that doesn't match yours? Is there a good time for that? Cool. All right, let's go to 21. It is beneficial to find out when I am wrong about something. So if somebody disagrees to this, if somebody says it's not beneficial, no one has here. So let's go ahead and imagine somebody saying that. Can you think of somebody who said that in the past? And what's a good way to imagine someone saying that it's not beneficial to find out when I'm wrong?
Well, there are certain, deeply held spiritual beliefs that people would have. They're like, I would rather proceed as if I'm correct on this. It wouldn't benefit me anyway to find out if I was wrong. I'd rather it be ambiguous for the rest of my life.
Yeah. One good response I've heard is, some things I know I'm wrong and I believe them anyway. And I've heard that straight up. And sometimes there's a good answer for that. Like, the gun is loaded. I believe that the gun is loaded, even though I know it's not loaded. I delude myself into believing that it's loaded. And in which case, what kind of question could you ask?
In the case of the gun?
Yeah.
That's funny. I was always
This
taught
is a
to
hard
assume-
one.
I was always taught to assume that the gun is loaded.
Yes.
And then check, of course.
You could ask, what could go wrong?
What could go wrong? Well, if I could end up shooting myself or somebody else if I believe that it's not loaded, because I think that I know if I know, and I could be wrong. So my question for that scenario would be, what's true about deluding yourself in this way? What is there a greater truth that you're using to rely on in order to adhere to this principle of believing that the gun is loaded?
Oh, yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
Because I know that it might not be. I'm open to the idea that either it is or it isn't, and I'm choosing to err on the side of the possibility that it is, which is a slightly different thing than saying, I'm just going to believe it is.
Right. Yeah. Okay. All right. Number one. It looks like four of us agree strongly, and one of us is neutral. I'm not sure if they're still in the room.
I'm the neutral party there.
Okay.
Only because the word statement to me could mean an attitude or a value.
Oh, okay. How would you, and so my first question with the survey is always, what would you prefer number one would say? What would you rather it say? What would be a better way to define what the truth is?
I mean, I understand where you're going with it, but I would, for me, like, it's just important to like make sure that we're talking about fact-based claims in a street epistemology attempt, because if I'm talking about your attitude, or if I'm talking about your value, then you need to kind of modify the conversation in some way, because your attitude's your attitude. It's positive or negative for a reason. But a fact-based claim is a fact-based claim, and it's a different kind of mental construct.
Okay. Can I lie about my attitude?
Oh yeah, that's good. I like that.
Yeah. So let's move on to number 4. People create words and define their meaning. Why do you think this is on the survey?
Because people fight about definitions all the time.
Yeah.
And demand that their definition is the correct one.
It's really helpful to get people talking about what words are and word games and get into that space.
Mm-hmm. Looks like we've got a couple people that disagree. If you disagree and you want to tell us why, both Wendy and Andy, please let us know.
Actually,
I wasn't actually disagreeing. I just put, I was
Neutral?
just taking it literally because, some people are creating words and defining their meaning. Others are just taking other people's words and, definitions and going with it and not necessarily thinking it out themselves, that kind of thing. But I do believe that obviously people do it, but animals do not. You know what I mean? So in that sense, so I was just looking at it in different ways. That's all.
Yeah, I actually like what Wendy's saying here. And I actually think that for the vast majority of the words we use, we don't bother defining them. We either rely on somebody else's definition or simply we go with an undefined kind of gut sense of what they mean.
I've also just heard people say straight up that the universe dictates what words are, and that's why they disagree. And it's important to pay careful attention to the reasons that they're using. And the only thing I want to know about if they disagree is whether or not they think that if I were speaking a different language and they couldn't understand me, would my words not have meaning? Or if you suddenly spoke that other language, would it magically get meaning? Or did it always have meaning and it's just our ability to understand each other that's the important thing? And that's generally the kind of line of questioning that I want to go through with that.
Mm.
Someone is justified in their beliefs until they're proven wrong. What's a good question we can ask somebody who thinks that? They basically are saying, well, you can't show that I'm wrong, so I'm justified until you prove me wrong.
I go Black Swan on this one. That's why I'm in the middle.
Black Swan?
Yeah, like I can never know if I'm right or wrong fully. So I'm not justified in my beliefs until they're proven wrong. Because some things can't be proved wrong, because I will never be able to reach enough evidence to find out whether or not I'm correct or not.
Oh, right. Like you shouldn't say that there are no black swans. Right. Yeah.
Even if I've seen 10 trillion swans, they're all white.
Imagine
But
for a moment.
I do realize that's a gamey thing to do, though.
Right. So it goes in both directions. I see 27 as the opposite of black swan, kind of, sort of. It's more like, we've never seen a black swan, so I'm justified to say that there are black swans.
I see what you're saying. Yeah, that's fine.
Right. And so my question would be, this is an outsider test, and I want to get them to think of something that they think is false, and have them fish for something that they think is false, and they can say mermaids, leprechauns, whatever. and then say, imagine some other third person comes into our conversation and they're telling us that, oh my goodness, welcome
need to
back,
stop.
beautiful
Tap on
people. Oh, we were almost done with 17. I almost got through it all.
That's impressive. That's impressive.
I had to skip a
Okay.
lot, but that's fine. We had a lot of fun.
What attracted me to this, the title of this group, Resolving Difficult Cases, is that the kinds of conversations that this subject matter leads to has a lot of overlap with some other difficult conversations that we're having right now in society with regard to people being on the opposite side of politics, with a religious component often being heavily involved in one of those sides. And those conversations can be indeed very difficult and yet very important right now if we're going to try to pull people together. And one of my overarching goals right now is more to be able to bridge than to convince, and try to find things in common. And so that just does seem indeed quite difficult, and has a little bit of loose association with this topic, and so that motivated me to come into this group. And so I just wanted to introduce where I'm coming from in this. That's all. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that, Dan.
Thank you. That's very good advice. I like the point where you said that don't expect the other to change his mind. Just exchange of ideas, and try not to convince the other person to take your ideas.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah. Thank you.
You're welcome. So let's dive into it, and let's imagine our conversation partner believes that karma is real, just for the sake of an example. So they say karma is real, and we ask for their confidence. The confidence is pretty high, and the reasons are mostly their personal experience. They say, let's say they found a purse lying on the ground, and instead of taking it for themselves, they've found the owner and gave it back. And guess what? After that couple of days, they get a promotion. They get promoted on their job. So obviously karma worked in their favor in that instance, and that's what they have. They have a pretty high confidence. How would you proceed?
I've had this argument with my wife.
Wow.
So one of the things that I pointed out is that I can actually have a perspective in common that gives a little bit in toward that perspective, in that I can see karma existing in a social context. I can see that human beings can reward other human beings for their behavior, and punish human beings for their behavior, and that can also manifest itself in ways that we don't necessarily see as directly related from one event to another. Whereas, for example, if you're a person who tends to do a lot of good things, you may develop a good reputation, and you may have some things that people end up doing in your favor or influencing in your favor that aren't necessarily directly related to the one thing you just did, and yet you're reaping the benefit of just being that kind of a person, because people tend to treat you in a way that corresponds to how they feel they should treat people of your character.
All right. Was that something you would tell your interlocutor, your conversational partner, in such a dialogue, or was it just your thought process out loud?
So I had that conversation with my wife, and that was my argument for why things tend to accumulate in a manner that could be associated with karma, good things accumulating for people who do good things.
Right.
the mechanism is social, not a universal force or whatever powers karma in a supernatural sense.
And if I ask you in a couple of words, how did that end? Did it have?
We agreed to disagree.
Right. Yeah. So one cool thing about street epistemology is that we maybe discourage is a strong word. We don't usually provide arguments against what our interlocutor is saying. Why it's not a generally good idea is because we humans have such a psychological state of mind that we can start reacting defensively to counter arguments. There are some scientific studies, for example, that dive into that, and there is some research shows that sometimes when people hear or read arguments against their deeply held beliefs, they feel like they are being personally attacked, and it's not a state of mind that tends to be correlated with the openness and with being able to honestly reevaluate our own beliefs. So generally, we advise people not to counter-argument what your IL is interlocutor is saying. But if you have arguments, you can phrase it in the form of polite questions, and that's what we do. Yeah, go ahead, Dan. You wanted to say something.
So I just wanted to get yours and everybody's perspective on the approach that I described. Does that come across to you as argumentative? Because it didn't feel argumentative to me, and my perspective on my own approach may be skewed.
Well, yeah, I probably said argument because, first of all, I didn't hear any questions. And I just assumed that you disagreed with your wife. And you also said so, that you agreed to disagree. So, yeah, that's probably why. And what I'm calling arguments, yeah, maybe it was not necessarily a strong counter argument. Maybe I was a bit off there. So we generally can call arguments things that we just say about our own thought processes, about things that we know, and not just discussing what our interlocutors think and how they reason about things. So when you're talking about what you think, what you know, we can roughly say it's an argument.
That's a good way of breaking out what an argument is. I feel like it did feel at the beginning like you were finding common ground, but then at the end, like where you made the assertions that it was all based on reputation and all based on trust, and then that did feel like you were drawing a very distinct line. That's where the argument came out.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Hondo.